What's up, everybody? In this video, we're going to compare the Camlink 4K versus one of those no-name brands that you can buy maybe on Amazon. We're going to do some full screen so you can get an idea on what each of them look like. Then we're going to do some side-by-side comparisons so you can get a pretty good understanding of some of the differences. Now, if you've invested in your stream and you're looking to get a DSLR camera hooked up as your webcam, you know that you've done the research and you know you're trying to figure out what input it is. We'll talk more about that at the end on what is a better purchase for you. But first, let's check out some of these examples. All right, so when we start with the side-by-side, I want to note these are the exact same settings that I use on my Camlink that I have on my camera. And you'll notice this is much darker. And for me, this is way too dark and everything just looks cloudy around me. So for the fairness of this, I did up the ISO, but when I up the ISO, you do see noticeable changes. This is only one step up in the ISO, and to me, the skin looks a little bit waxy. The skin colors aren't exactly there, but we'll do more of a side-by-side. But this does give you a pretty good idea if you do play around with your ISO, or maybe you have different type of lighting within your room, you might see a noticeable difference. Given that we are in full screen, I think it's much more noticeable, but if you do compress that in a window, I think this is actually a really good option. Now, when we look at the Camlink, the first thing that stands out to me is the skin tones are much more natural. Now, this is a little bit lower on the ISO setting, and I'll change those as well to brighter and darker from here so you can get a good idea. But to me, some of that waxy feeling is gone. That portrait, that filter that seems to be there on the other one doesn't quite feel there. Not only that, but the surrounding area around me also feels more illuminated. Now, with the high ISO, it does look a little bit more washed. On the lower ISO, it just kind of looks a little bit darker. Now, I do tend to crop this more in my own videos, but this does give you a pretty good idea of the range and the differences between the Camlink. Now, when we do a side-by-side, I think the obvious things stand out. There is a little bit of washed on the Camlink side. That's mostly due to my ISO and my lighting. But on the left, you can see things just are a bit darker. When the lighting goes up or the ISO goes up, you can see even more noticeable differences. So when we take things down, you'll also see that things do look a lot better on the Camlink. So overall, what does that mean for this? This thing I actually had to buy last year because the Camlinks were sold out. When everybody was working from home and all those things were going on in 2020, there wasn't enough Camlinks to go around. This year I upgraded, and I wanted to make sure it was an upgrade. Do I think that this thing is bad? Absolutely not. I've been using this for a long time, and this does get me by. There's a lot of options that might even be cheaper. Now, if you're not doing full screen faces like this, then when it's compacted in normally like a cam window, then normally that's gonna not be as noticeable, some of those glaring differences. But overall, it is good. But when I want to do something better, when I occasionally go full screen, or when I want to do videos like this, I want things to look much more natural, a lot more professional for me in general. And the Camlink takes that from a cheaper option to a nice option. So is the price worth it? Well, that really depends on your budget. For me, if you have the money and you can spend it, absolutely. If you're going to be upgrading stuff in the future with 4K and all that, which to be honest, we don't even have the technology to stream that. But in terms of recordings and things like that, the Camlink absolutely would be there. If you're more on a budget and you're trying to find something that fits that, then I think this is a great option. There's even cheaper options than this, but I think you're going to find a lot of the same similarities of what you're looking at in those side by side. But overall, for me, I think the Camlink is definitely a step in the right direction to make sure that you get a good quality picture if you are shifting to that DSLR. To be honest with you, if you're using a DSLR, you want to make sure and get as much out of it as you can because there's a reason you're spending that much money on it. So if you can afford that, then maybe it's time to go to the Camlink as well, or at least start there. So which one are you going with? What are the key differences that made you pick one over the other? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.